There's something magical about the way food connects us to place, to memory, to home. Every state in America has its own culinary secrets, dishes that make perfect sense when you're standing in a Kansas diner or a Kentucky kitchen, but leave outsiders scratching their heads in confusion. These aren't the famous regional foods you see on cooking shows or travel channels. These are the quiet favorites, the local legends, the meals that grandmothers made and diners served and entire communities understood without explanation. They're the dishes that disappeared from menus, faded from cookbooks, and exist now mostly in memories and old recipe cards tucked into kitchen drawers. Some were born from necessity during hard times, others from cultural traditions mixing in the great American melting pot, and a few from pure regional imagination that never quite translated beyond state lines. Today, we're looking at 15 forgotten American dishes that make absolutely zero sense outside their home state. The meals that remind us America isn't just one country, it's 50 different food traditions wrapped in a single flag, each one stranger and more wonderful than the last. Number 15. Gota, Ohio. The Cincinnati breakfast nobody understands. Drive through Cincinnati, Ohio, and you'll still find Gota on breakfast menus, sitting right next to eggs and hash browns like it belongs there. To locals, it does belong. To everyone else, it's a mystery wrapped in a patty and fried until crispy. Gota is a German invention that came over with immigrants in the 1800s, a mix of ground meat, usually pork and beef, combined with steel-cut oats and spiced with salt, pepper, and sometimes bay leaves. Families would make big batches, let it set up in loaf pans, then slice and fry it throughout the week. It was poverty food, stretching expensive meat with cheap oats, making sure nothing went to waste when times were tight. The texture is what throws people off. It's grainy from the oats, crumbly yet somehow holding together, meat-flavored but not quite meat. In Cincinnati, it's comfort, it's tradition, it's what Saturday mornings smell like. Drive 50 miles in any direction and people look at you like you're speaking a foreign language when you order it, because Gota never traveled, never needed to, content to remain a Cincinnati secret that only makes sense when you grew up eating it. Number 14. Funeral potatoes, Utah. Casserole with the dark name in American cuisine. Utah's most famous comfort food has the most unsettling name in American cuisine, funeral potatoes. The dish is exactly what it sounds like, a potato casserole served at Mormon funeral luncheons, family gatherings, and church potlucks across the state. It's made with hash browns or cubed potatoes, mixed with cream of chicken soup, sour cream, cheese, and topped with crushed cornflakes or potato chips for crunch. Bake it until it's golden and bubbly, and you've got something that tastes like every church basement in Utah. The name comes from its role in LDS funeral traditions, where women of the church prepare meals to comfort grieving families, and this casserole shows up so reliably it earned the morbid nickname. It's pure comfort, warm and rich and filling in a way that says everything will be okay without words. Outside Utah, people get hung up on the name, can't quite wrap their heads around associating potatoes with death, miss the entire point that food is how communities show love during hard times. The dish itself has faded from many modern menus because younger generations are moving away from heavy cream-based casseroles. But in Utah, funeral potatoes remain as essential as the mountains themselves, a reminder that comfort food earned its name for a reason.
Number 13. City chicken, Pennsylvania, the chicken that isn't chicken. Pennsylvania, Ohio, and parts of Michigan know about city chicken, and that knowledge is a closely guarded regional secret. Here's the confusing part. City chicken contains no chicken whatsoever. It's cubes of pork or veal threaded onto wooden skewers, breaded and either fried or baked until golden. The name comes from the Depression era when actual chicken was expensive, a luxury for rural folks with hen houses, while city dwellers made do with cheaper cuts of meat. Someone got clever, shaped pork to look like chicken drumsticks on a stick, and called it city chicken because it was what urban families could afford. The dish caught on in Polish and Ukrainian immigrant communities throughout Pennsylvania and the Rust Belt, becoming a weekend dinner staple that lasted through the 50s and 60s. Kids loved eating food off a stick, mothers loved stretching their meat budgets, and everyone loved the crispy breaded coating. Then real chicken became cheaper than pork, supermarkets made everything accessible, and city chicken lost its economic purpose. The few people who still make it are usually over 60, following recipes their mothers taught them, trying to explain to confused grandchildren why this pork on a stick is called chicken. Outside Pennsylvania, you mention city chicken and people think you're talking about pigeons, which is a whole different story nobody wants to hear. Number 12. Chislic, South Dakota. Fried mystery meat on a toothpick. South Dakota has a state snack food and nobody outside the state has ever heard of it. Chislic, pronounced chislic if you want to sound like a local. It's cubed meat, usually lamb or mutton, but sometimes beef, deep-fried or grilled, seasoned with garlic salt, and served on toothpicks. That's it. That's the whole dish. It sounds simple, maybe too simple, until you're sitting in a South Dakota bar with a basket of chislic in front of you, the smell of garlic and fried meat filling the air, and suddenly it makes perfect sense. Chislic came from Russian-German immigrants who settled in South Dakota in the 1870s and 1880s, bringing their tradition of shashlik, skewered meat, and adapting it to prairie life and available ingredients. For decades, it was backyard food, party food, wedding reception food, something everyone in South Dakota knew but never thought to explain to outsiders. The dish started appearing in bars and restaurants in the southern part of the state, particularly around Freeman and Yankton, and gradually spread until the state legislature officially made it South Dakota's state snack in 2018. But here's the thing, chislic remains almost completely unknown outside South Dakota because it's so specific, so tied to that particular mix of cultures and geography that it never translated. Order it on the coasts and you'll get blank stares, which is fine with South Dakotans who figure some things are worth keeping to themselves. Number 11. Pepperoni rolls. West Virginia, the coal miner's perfect lunch. West Virginia's contribution to American cuisine is a soft roll with pepperoni baked right inside, and if that sounds too simple to be significant, you've never worked a 12-hour shift underground in a coal mine. Pepperoni rolls were invented in 1927 by Giuseppe or Joseph Argiro, an Italian immigrant baker in Fairmont, West Virginia, who wanted to create something coal miners could eat with dirty hands in dark tunnels. The genius was baking the pepperoni inside the dough, no wrapper to fumble with, no utensils needed, nothing that would fall apart when you were 500 feet underground covered in coal dust. The rolls stayed fresh without refrigeration, the pepperoni's fat kept the bread moist, and the whole thing fit perfectly in a lunch pail. Italian bakeries across West Virginia started making their own versions, and pepperoni rolls became as essential to mining culture as hard hats and headlamps. When coal mining declined, the rolls remained, sold in every gas station and convenience store across the state, a food so connected to West Virginia identity that people get emotional about it. Outside the state, pepperoni rolls exist, but they're never quite right. Too fancy, wrong bread, missing that specific ratio of dough to meat that Argiro perfected. The dish faded from national consciousness because it was never meant for national consumption. It was made for a specific group of men doing specific work in a specific place, and that kind of authenticity doesn't scale up or travel well. Number 10. Fried brain sandwich. Indiana, the delicacy nobody admits eating. Southern Indiana, particularly around the Ohio River, has a culinary tradition that makes most people deeply uncomfortable, the fried brain sandwich. Before you close this video, hear the story because it's worth telling even if the eating part is debatable. The sandwich is exactly what it sounds like, sliced pig or cow brain, battered, deep-fried, and served on white bread with mustard, pickles, and onions. German immigrants brought the tradition in the 1800s, part of their nose-to-tail philosophy that every part of the animal had value and purpose. Brain is surprisingly mild, creamy in texture, high in protein, and when fried becomes crispy outside and soft inside, like a very strange version of fried fish. The sandwich was common throughout Indiana and the Ohio River Valley through the 1960s, found at local taverns, county fairs, and butcher shops that still processed whole animals. Then came mad cow disease scares in the 1990s, health departments started cracking down, and suddenly restaurants stopped advertising brain sandwiches even if they quietly kept making them.
The few places that still serve brain sandwiches today, places like the Hilltop Inn in Evansville, have become pilgrimage sites for food adventurers and nostalgic locals. Outside Indiana, the dish is treated like a horror story, something that couldn't possibly be real or appetizing. But to the German communities along the Ohio River, it was just another way of being practical and respectful with food, another tradition that disappeared when America decided some parts of its culinary history were too uncomfortable to remember.
Number 9. Hot Brown, Kentucky. The Thanksgiving sandwich nobody knows. Kentucky gave America bourbon and the Kentucky Derby, but its greatest culinary contribution remains largely forgotten outside state lines: the hot brown, an open-faced turkey sandwich that sounds boring until you taste it. Created in 1926 at the Brown Hotel in Louisville by chef Fred Schmidt, the hot brown was designed for the hotel's dinner dances, which often ran past midnight and left guests hungry for something more substantial than sandwiches but less formal than a full dinner. Schmidt took sliced turkey, placed it on toast, covered it with Mornay sauce, a rich cheese sauce, added bacon and tomato, then broiled the whole thing until bubbly and brown. It was sophisticated comfort food, something that felt fancy enough for a hotel dining room, but satisfying enough to soak up an evening's worth of cocktails. The hot brown became a Louisville institution, copied by restaurants throughout Kentucky, a standard on country club menus and special occasion dinners. Then several things happened. The Brown Hotel closed in 1971, formal hotel dining fell out of fashion, and America moved away from heavy cream-based sauces in favor of lighter fare. The hot brown survived in Louisville. The Brown Hotel reopened in 1985 and still serves the original, but elsewhere it faded, remembered only by older generations who attended enough fancy dinners to encounter it. Outside Kentucky, people hear hot brown and have no reference point, no context, no understanding that this forgotten sandwich represents a whole era of American dining when hotels were the center of social life and chefs created dishes meant to impress and comfort in equal measure. Number 8. Runza, Nebraska, the stuffed bread that stayed home. Nebraska has an official state sandwich, and if you're not from Nebraska, you've probably never heard of it: the runza, a pocket of bread dough stuffed with ground beef, cabbage, and onions and seasonings, baked until golden. The name comes from the Low German word runza, meaning bun-shaped, brought to Nebraska by Volga German immigrants in the 1870s who fled Russia and settled the Great Plains. These German families had spent generations in Russia, picking up Eastern European cooking techniques before migrating again to America, bringing with them foods that were German-Russian hybrids nobody else quite understood. The runza was perfect for prairie life: portable, filling, made from ingredients that stored well, and substantial enough to fuel farm work. For decades, it was home cooking, church supper food, something grandmothers made and families loved without thinking it needed explaining. Then several things happened. The woman named Sally Everett started selling runzas from her cafe in Lincoln, eventually creating the Runza restaurant chain that now dots Nebraska like filling stations. The dish became commercially successful within the state, but never expanded nationally, partly because it's hard to explain. It's not quite a hot pocket, not exactly a calzone, not really a burrito, and partly because it's so tied to Nebraska identity that it feels wrong somewhere else. Outside Nebraska, hand pies and stuffed breads exist, but they're not runzas, don't carry that specific blend of German discipline and Russian hardiness and Nebraska practicality that makes the runza make sense only when you're surrounded by cornfields and endless sky.
Number 7. Fry sauce, Utah, Idaho. The condiment war nobody won. Utah and Idaho fight over who invented fry sauce, and the rest of America fights over why it needs a special name when it's just ketchup and mayonnaise mixed together. But here's the thing. To people in the Intermountain West, fry sauce isn't just mixed condiments. It's the only acceptable accompaniment to French fries, the standard by which burger joints are judged, a cultural marker as significant as funeral potatoes or green Jell-O salads. The most popular origin story credits Don Carlos Edwards, who founded the Arctic Circle restaurant chain in Salt Lake City in 1948 and supposedly created the sauce to give his burgers and fries something special. Other stories point to similar concoctions appearing around the same time at other local drive-ins, suggesting it was one of those ideas that emerged from the regional zeitgeist rather than a single inventor. The sauce is usually 2 parts mayo to 1 part ketchup, sometimes with pickle juice, garlic powder, or other seasonings added, served in little cups alongside fries at every fast food place from Boise to Provo. It's beloved with religious fervor in Utah and Idaho, treated as a quirky regional oddity everywhere else. The dish, if you can call a sauce a dish, never disappeared exactly, but it never traveled either, remaining intensely local in a way that baffles food marketers and anthropologists alike. Outside the Intermountain West, asking for fry sauce gets you strange looks and 2 separate containers of ketchup and mayo, which misses the entire point, that some things need to be mixed properly, balanced correctly, respected as their own creation rather than just components thrown together. Number 6. Toasted ravioli, Missouri, the Italian food that's definitely not Italian. St. Louis, Missouri claims to have invented toasted ravioli, and Italy has never been more confused. The dish is breaded ravioli, deep-fried until crispy, dusted with Parmesan cheese, and served with marinara sauce for dipping. It's bar food, appetizer food, party food, and it's so fundamental to St. Louis identity that locals call it T-Ravs and eat it the way other cities eat chicken wings. The origin story goes that sometime in the 1940s, a chef at Old Donnie's restaurant in the Italian neighborhood called The Hill accidentally dropped ravioli in the deep fryer instead of boiling water, tasted the result, and decided it was too good to waste. Whether that story is true or not, and St. Louis has several competing claims, toasted ravioli became the Hill institution, served at countless Italian restaurants, bars, and eventually at every wedding reception and graduation party in the metro area. The dish works because frying transforms pasta's texture, making it crispy outside while the filling stays soft and flavorful inside, and the breading adds substance without overwhelming the cheese or meat filling. St. Louis people grew up eating T-Ravs, never questioning why fried pasta wasn't everywhere, never realizing it was weird until they left the city and discovered nobody else had heard of it. The dish faded from national consciousness, if it was ever there, because it's too specific, too tied to St. Louis's particular brand of Italian-American cuisine, too strange for Italian restaurants elsewhere, and too ethnic for generic American restaurants. Outside St. Louis, fried ravioli exists in scattered places, but it's never quite the same, never quite right, missing something essential that only makes sense when you're in Missouri drinking Budweiser and eating food that Italy would disown, but St. Louis considers sacred.
Number 5. Scrapple, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland. The breakfast meat nobody wants to explain. Mid-Atlantic states have a breakfast tradition they love to eat but hate to describe. Scrapple, the pork product that uses every part of the pig you didn't know could be food. Pennsylvania Dutch farmers created scrapple as the ultimate waste-not, want-not food, taking all the parts left over after butchering, organ meats, trimmings, bits too small or odd for anything else, and boiling them with cornmeal and flour until it formed a loaf. Slice it, fry it crispy in butter, and you've got something that tastes better than it has any right to taste. The name comes from scraps, which tells you everything and nothing about what you're eating. In Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland, scrapple is breakfast table gospel, served alongside eggs at diners, sold in blocks at every grocery store, defended passionately against outsiders who make faces before tasting it. It's crispy, savory, slightly livery, with a texture that's part sausage, part crispy hash, part something entirely its own. The dish never traveled because explaining it requires mentioning pig parts people prefer not to think about, because it looks gray and unappetizing before frying, and because it requires a cultural context where nothing goes to waste and everything has value. Outside its mid-Atlantic stronghold, scrapple is treated as a curiosity or a dare, something to survive rather than savor. It's been fading even in its home territory, as generations raised on neat plastic-wrapped meat lose their connection to butchering traditions and the philosophy that created scrapple in the first place, that respectful use of the whole animal is practical, economical, and, if done right, absolutely delicious. Number 4. Olive Burger, Michigan, the topping that divides a state. Michigan has a burger topping that splits the state into believers and skeptics. Chopped green olives mixed with mayonnaise spread on burgers in such quantities that you taste olives before you taste beef. The olive burger supposedly originated at Weston's Kewpie Hotel Hamburgs in Lansing in the 1920s, though several Michigan establishments claim to be first. What matters is that olive burgers became a thing in mid-Michigan, spreading through Lansing, Grand Rapids, and surrounding areas, showing up on bar menus and local chains and mom-and-pop burger joints that understood their community wanted olives on everything. The combination sounds strange. Olives are usually pizza toppers or martini garnishes, not burger condiments. But something about the briny, salty, slightly bitter olives cuts through the richness of beef and cheese in a way that pickles can't quite match. It's an acquired taste, the kind of thing you have to grow up with to fully appreciate, which is why Michigan kids either love olive burgers with fierce loyalty or hate them with equal passion. The dish never escaped Michigan's gravity well because olives on burgers feel wrong to most Americans, because it's too specific and strange to chain restaurants, and because Michigan never pushed it as a state icon the way other places promote their food traditions. Even within Michigan, olive burgers are fading as local burger joints close and chains take over, as younger generations order standard bacon cheeseburgers instead of weird local variations. The olive burger remains alive in scattered locations, a test of Michigan credentials, a flavor that makes perfect sense when you're home and no sense at all when you try explaining it to someone from anywhere else.
Number 3. Cincinnati Chili, Ohio. The chili that breaks all the rules. Cincinnati has a chili that makes Texas cry and purists furious. A thin, meat-based sauce seasoned with cinnamon, chocolate, allspice, and served over spaghetti, topped with mounds of shredded cheddar cheese, onions, and beans if you're feeling adventurous. It's not chili in any traditional sense, not thick or chunky or particularly spicy, but it's what Cincinnati calls chili and has since Macedonian immigrants Tom and John Kiragiev opened their hot dog stand in 1922 and started serving their Mediterranean spiced meat sauce to curious customers. The Kiragiev brothers adapted their family's recipes to American ingredients and tastes, creating something that was Greek stew meets American chili meets spaghetti dinner meets its own strange thing. The result is Skyline Chili, Gold Star Chili, and dozens of local chains and independent parlors serving variations on the theme, each with devoted followings that will fight you about which one's best. Order it 3-way for spaghetti, chili, and cheese. 4-way adds onions or beans. 5-way adds both. Cincinnati people eat this constantly, unapologetically, defensively when outsiders criticize it, because it's theirs, it's home, it's what chili is supposed to be regardless of what anyone else thinks. The dish never disappeared in Cincinnati, but never conquered outside it, because it's too weird, too specific, too willing to break every rule about what chili should be. Outside Ohio, Cincinnati chili is a punchline, a culinary crime, something that couldn't possibly be good despite the millions of Cincinnatians who eat it weekly and would defend it with their lives. It's forgotten nationally, while remaining intensely alive locally, proof that American regional food operates in parallel universes that sometimes barely acknowledge each other's existence. Number 2. Boiled peanuts in the Deep South, the snack that confuses everyone. Drive through South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, or northern Florida, and you'll see hand-painted signs on rural roadsides advertising boiled peanuts, also spelled boiled peanuts, because the South likes to save time on vowels. For people born above the Mason-Dixon line, boiled peanuts are confusing. Peanuts are supposed to be roasted, dry, crunchy, ballpark food, or trail mix components. Boiling them seems like a mistake, like cooking them wrong. But in the Deep South, boiled peanuts are summer incarnate, the taste of roadside stands and country stores and grandpa's backyard parties. Green peanuts, meaning unroasted, freshly harvested, are boiled for hours in heavily salted water, sometimes with Cajun spices or ham hocks for flavor, until they're soft, salty, and addictively habit-forming. The texture throws people off. They're almost bean-like, soft enough to bite through completely, nothing like the peanuts that come in jars. Boiled peanuts have roots in African cuisine, brought to America by enslaved peoples who recognized peanuts, ground nuts, from their homelands and knew how to cook them. The tradition stuck in the rural South, where peanut farming was common and boiling was an easy way to prepare the harvest. The dish hasn't disappeared in its home territory, but it never expanded because it requires fresh green peanuts that aren't available in most of the country, because the texture is off-putting to uninitiated palates, and because it's tied to rural Southern culture in ways that don't translate to urban or northern contexts. Outside the Deep South, boiled peanuts are barely known, treated as Southern eccentricity, while inside their territory, they remain essential summer food, proof that you can't judge a dish until you've eaten it where it was meant to be eaten.
Number 1. Pork tenderloin sandwich, Indiana. The sandwich bigger than your head. Indiana's unofficial state sandwich is a massive, breaded, deep-fried pork tenderloin that extends several inches beyond the bun in every direction, served with basic fixings and zero apology for its absurd size. The sandwich supposedly originated in Huntington, Indiana in 1904 at Nick's Kitchen, though, like all great food origin stories, several places claim to be first. What matters is that the pork tenderloin sandwich became Indiana's identity food, the thing locals defend passionately, the dish that defines summer county fairs and roadside diners and Friday night fish fry places that also serve pork. The tenderloin is pounded thin, not cutlet thin, but paper thin, breaded in cracker crumbs or flour, and fried until it's crispy and roughly the size of a dinner plate. The bun is standard hamburger size, which means the meat hangs over by 3 or 4 inches on all sides, creating a visual so ridiculous it became the point. You're supposed to eat the crispy edges first, then work your way to the middle where the bun actually provides some bread-to-meat ratio. The sandwich makes sense in Indiana, where German schnitzel traditions met Midwest farm culture and American excess, where big portions signal generosity and nobody apologizes for enjoying fried food. Outside Indiana, the pork tenderloin sandwich exists in scattered locations, but it's forgotten nationally, unknown in most of America, treated as a regional curiosity rather than legitimate food. It's been fading even in Indiana as health consciousness rises and chain restaurants standardize everything. But scattered diners and county fair booths keep it alive, serving pork tenderloins that still dwarf their guns, still make no practical sense, and still taste exactly like Indiana on a summer afternoon. These 15 dishes are more than just forgotten recipes and faded menu items. They're evidence of America's beautiful, bizarre, completely unsystematic approach to food. Every state has its secrets, its local legends, its flavors that make perfect sense at home and absolutely no sense anywhere else. Some of these dishes are hanging on, kept alive by passionate locals and stubborn restaurants that refuse to let traditions die. Others have mostly disappeared, living now in cookbooks and memories and occasional food documentaries that treat them like archaeological discoveries. But all of them remind us that America's real culinary heritage isn't in fancy restaurants or food television. It's in church basements and county fairs, roadside stands and neighborhood diners, places where people make food that matters to their community, even if it confuses everyone else. If you've got a regional dish from your state that makes zero sense to outsiders, drop it in the comments and tell us the story. We want to hear about the food that makes your corner of America special. And if you enjoyed this journey through America's forgotten flavors, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next trip through the memories, traditions, and stories that made us who we are. Until next time, keep your regional food weird, keep your local traditions alive, and never apologize for loving something just because nobody else understands it.